On this episode of Project 1114, we take that beat up 14B turbo out of the Galant. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of Project 1114. And yes, that's our 1991 Mitsubishi Galant VR-4. On this episode, guys, we really got to get to the root of this lack of power. Ever since I test drove the car, anytime I moved the car since then, the turbo just doesn't have the guts it should have in this car. So suspect is that little 14B turbo. I think it's time to get in there, take a look, check out the exhaust manifold situation. We love how these Galant exhaust manifolds tend to kind of fall apart over time. So let's get in there, let's pull the exhaust manifold out, let's take the turbo out and see what we're dealing with. Let's get in the garage and get some work done. Well, we wouldn't have made it too far without putting this in the car. Boom, there we go. Got to put the brain back in it, right? Got the capacitors redone from ECM tuning, and on top of that, I also had a chip installed, or at least the slot, so it can be programmed if anyone wants to get ECM link or anything like that to tune this ECU in the future. So it's always nice to do that. Little bonus to the next owner. It's completely stock right now, but it does have the ability to be upgraded already. How awesome is that? Let's get her in the car. Now from the get-go, I thought this car felt a little down on power. So I really want to dig under this heat shield to see what's going on with the exhaust manifold, as well as the turbo in general. So that tiny 14B, I know those housings also like to crack. So what I ultimately probably need to do here is pull all this off. You'll take the intercooler piping off, the heat shield. We'll examine the exhaust manifold. It's probably easier just to remove that. We'll see how the downpipe is on the turbo, remove it from that angle, and just kind of pull the exhaust manifold with the turbo all the way out. So let's go ahead and start uncovering it. Forgot about the little secret of pulling the dipstick out. You can kind of angle it over there. It's kind of the best way to do it. Here's the big concern with these Galant VR-4, and I believe it's the same issue with the first gen DSM exhaust manifolds. You can see this pretty nice sized crack right here. Also a sizable crack, and you know that goes to the other side. This crack right down in here as well. So yeah, it's not a good look. I have a feeling the turbine housing is going to have similar cracks. So now that our exhaust manifold has a great chance to marinate in some PB Blaster, we can really see the cracks and the severity here in the exhaust manifold. So got a plan for how we're going to fix that and that turbo. So stay tuned for that. But honestly, getting it out, a little bit of a hassle. We're going to go ahead and pull the radiator just to create some space. So we're going to have to drain all the coolant out. We're going to do water pump anyway, so might as well while we're in there. Disconnect the exhaust. Who knows what those factory bolts that I've been touched for 30 years are going to be like, and then pull the whole manifold, turbo, and downpipe out at the same time is our plan. So let's get to work on there. A couple little things we got to disconnect as we go along, but let's hope everything comes off nice and easy. Fingers crossed on this one. Don't forget to undo your turbo oil feed line here that connects to the oil pan. It's an alternative way to do an oil change if you haven't drained the oil yet either, so good times. We'll obviously take off the oil drain plug for this and drain the rest of the oil out of the system. But yeah, don't forget to undo it. 2 little 10mm bolts, nice and easy, so when you pull that turbo up, it should come out freely. Before we just haul this turbo right out of the engine bay like it's not connected to a million things, let's go ahead and disconnect those million things. On the turbo itself, there are multiple inlets for coolant and oil, so you are going to have to check that out. Now, the connections are back here. Both the side ones are coolant, top one bottom one are oil. So you're gonna have to trace those lines back. What I'm doing, since we're gonna put a new turbo on, is I'm gonna remove the line from where they connect to the engine. So you've got your oil source here, one of the coolant lines, it's either this one or this one of these. And we've already done the oil drain pan for the oil feed. And there's another coolant line that's kind of annoying that connects down here to the hard line that goes across the whole front of the engine. So that'll be fun to do. Go ahead, there are 4 total. You have to disconnect all of those before you can pull this up. And then of course our next thing will be the exhaust manifold itself, which is always a blast. First things first, this bracket needs to come off here. 12mm bolts. Bracket removed. Time to get all these nuts off. Alright, you're almost getting that exhaust manifold off, and there's always going to be one bolt, right? That one troublemaker. And on the Galant VR-4, it's going to be this guy over here. Yep, the bottom right one on the driver's side is going to be your troublemaker. So, to help you out with getting that, you can use a flex head, some other tools to get to it, but really, the best tried and true way to do this is to remove the power steering pump right here. 3 bolts to move the pump out of the way, then there's a bracket, move that and you'll have a straight shot at that. Might as well do it because you're going to need to put a new stud and nut on anyway. Fun times. Now the tricky part of this operation is you do have 2 bolts, but you can see the pulley has holes. They need to line up. There's 2 bolts behind there, behind the pulley itself, that you actually have to remove. So you might have to turn your crank a little bit to get the engine to turn to line that up perfectly. Mine looks like it should be good to go. So go ahead, pull those bolts out, pull the bracket out, and you can get to your final pain in the butt exhaust manifold stud and nut. Much better. Now we have access down to these bolts to hold this little bracket. Looks like we got a secret bolt around here on the side here you gotta take off. What the hell are these studs made out of? Aluminum foil? Look at this. Alright, everything should be disconnected. We're gonna go ahead and pull that exhaust manifold off the studs and straight up. Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Okay, got good movement, that's good. Why are you not wanting to come? Alright, there's a bolt holding a bracket to right where the downpipe and turbo are. It's right next to the oil filter. You gotta take that bolt out or you won't get enough movement to get the exhaust manifold off. So it's wiggling pretty good now. Let's see if it's gonna come up. See if I don't have any other things I might have missed disconnecting. There we go. Oh yeah, we're looking nice and crusty under here. Yeah, undoing that bolt right there is what gave you this play. And the 2 bolts by the catalytic converter also allowed a little bit of play, and you're going to need everything you can get. That helped. Okay, we've got the exhaust manifold and turbo and everything out of there. Just look how coated with oil the whole front of the block is. I mean, just get in there and it is thick. So of course we're going to clean that up before we put the new stuff on. Really curious to perform an autopsy on the old exhaust manifold and 14V turbo that came off the Galant VR-4. So let's dig in, let's find out what's going on. I have a feeling we're gonna see a lot of cracking around the exhaust side of this turbo, but let's open it up just for the sake of science, right guys? And plus we gotta use this O2 sensor housing. I'm gonna reuse that, no cracks in that, it looks really good. That's why I left the O2 sensor in there, easy peasy, right? So let's go ahead and pop these bolts off that hold the actual turbo to the O2 sensor housing. We'll see how the turbo looks back here, and then also we'll pull off the exhaust manifold, maybe just for funsies to see what the turbo looks like on that side. Let's do it. So once we got the O2 sensor housing out, you can see the cause of something that definitely doesn't benefit a turbo. The wastegate flapper area has a huge crack in it, so that is definitely going to impact performance for sure. Also, something interesting is look how white the turbines are. It's like it got really, really hot at one point in there, and that makes me think maybe there was an internal oiling issue. It does look like it was leaking oil up here with the feed line, so yikes. I mean, that could be another reason. This car was not making power. I didn't have a boost gauge or anything to detect, but boy, it felt empty. You know, when I test drove it, when I drove it home after buying it. And the 14B, believe it or not, is actually a pretty hefty turbo as far as like modern turbos go. It's pretty good size, puts out some pretty good power, so a stock Galant VR-4 or first gen DSM doesn't really feel slow, and this car felt like it couldn't get out of its own way. So I'm kind of curious what was going on. Yeah, I think this guy was toast. Can't wait to put the rebuilt unit in. All new gaskets, that 2G exhaust manifold. This Galant VR-4 is going to be right back to where it should be. Alright, it's time to clean up these parts that are going to be reused or reapplied. So I've got the old O2 sensor housing, which is in great shape, no cracks or anything like that. These hold up pretty good. I'm going to give it a good once over, scrub it up, sand it, clean everything up. Same with this second gen exhaust manifold. This is kind of gnarly, kind of dirty, looks like it's been sitting for a while, so we'll clean that up too. I do have a coating I'm going to apply to both of these before I make them with that rebuilt beautiful 14B turbo. I'm also going to clean the old turbo setup. We got to pull everything off of there, so the oil feed lines, the coolant lines, everything like that needs to come off, so I want to clean it up so it's not greasy and not dirty going on the new turbo setup. So let's clean some stuff up, guys. Really want to show the severity of the manifold cracks here on the bottom side. So we are looking at the bottom side of the exhaust manifold, and these cracks here are just exceptionally bad. I mean, look at them on the runners, on both these runners, and it goes all the way around to the top side. So that's a pretty serious crack. Down here, another huge crack running all the way up that runner. So yeah, this manifold's pretty toasty. Not too much hope left for this one. These old parts aren't going to cut it for putting that new turbo on. I say we make them look a little nicer. Got some Pour 15 high temp here. Let's clean this up a little bit, shall we? Time to put all our freshly painted components back together and get this turbo ready to be dropped in the car. Definitely gasket time. So we got some new metal gaskets. These are a little harder to source, that goes between the manifold and the turbo. Same with the one that goes between the turbo and the O2 housing. Remember also you want to use that coupler again. That drops right in there. Don't lose that bad boy. Now it's time to attach the O2 sensor housing. Another gasket that's hard to find. It's a completely metal one. I don't like to reuse those. They get pretty beat up over time, so time to slap a new one on here. Looking pretty good here, guys. Looking really good. So now it's going to be a time-consuming part where we have to take all our oil feed and coolant lines and start piping them into the turbo itself. It'll be like this when you get a new turbo or a refurbished turbo, but those will be the ports that you use. So we're going to use the same hardware because it wasn't leaking or anything, but we do have some new gaskets, and you want to use gaskets especially with the oil feed lines. I know those kind of break down over time and leak, so good time to do that.
There we go, just attach the final oil line. If you remember, there is an oil feed line that's still in the car that it was really hard to get out. So what I'll do is I'll install the manifold and turbo again, and then we'll go ahead and just put that. And it goes right here, so we'll fasten that on. Here we go, guys. The new turbo's hijacked all the parts off the old one. Here we go. Here's our new setup, and 1114 is gonna have the ability to make some boost, hopefully, which will be really nice. Also got a new to the downpipe from the O2 housing gasket. These are getting harder to find too. So let's just slam that bad boy on there. Sweet. I think this thing's just about ready to get thrown back on the car. What do you guys say?